And here we are, guys. Coaches are back, Bully and Gully. And we're going to hop right into football season. It's already almost a quarter of the way done. Gully has been a very interesting 3 weeks that have happened. And, guys, what we're going to do in this segment and going forward for a little bit is give our own take on some fantasy players as well, since that's the big hot topic, instead of just recapping every game, which, you know, we've seen the highlights a billion times. So to recap and give you some highlights that we didn't want to do, give me your biggest surprise in 3 weeks, whether it's a fantasy player, a regular player, a team, a coach. What has been the biggest surprise for you so far through 3 weeks of the NFL season?
Okay, so I'll start off with the biggest surprise, I think, overall is the Vikings. And I know that we're obviously a little bit homers, but I don't think anybody expected, Sam Darnold and team to be as good as they are. I mean, we are looking really good on almost every facet of the game. I think that's probably my biggest surprise team-wise, for sure.
Yeah, the defense has been outstanding. Darnold has been efficient. And this is without TJ Hawkinson and Jordan Addison. The run game has been, pretty solid.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not surprised that they ended up beating the Niners. I knew I kind of had a feeling that it could happen, or it was going to be a close game.
Right.
And I'm not surprised that they did end up beating Houston after watching the 49ers game, but I did not expect the shellacking that Houston got from us.
Oh, same here. Same here. I actually thought it was going to be a much closer game.
Yep.
Yeah. So I would say for team-wise, that's probably my biggest standout. If we want to go for a player, I'd almost kind of put out early odds being maybe comeback player of the year, J.K. Dobbins maybe.
Okay.
I'm actually pretty surprised at how well he's been doing for the Chargers.
Yeah.
So it's good to see. I've always been kind of a fan of his, had him in, fantasy teams over the years, but, injuries are us is the story he likes to shop at. So
funny you mentioned that, because JK was also my surprise player, and I'm holding Gus Edwards in a couple of fantasy leagues, just waiting for that injury to occur, and my team might take off here. But so far he's, third in rushing yards and had some pretty outstanding performances. So that is a very big surprise, considering in Baltimore he, was always shaky, and now seems like he's clearly got the nod over Gus.
Agreed.
Over there.
Yep.
We knew that they would have a heavy running attack, but he's been outstanding. I would say my surprise team right now would be Cincinnati. They didn't look good Monday night.
They did not. No,
they had some chances to win. I know they played Kansas City close, but to lose that bad in at home, I think it was at home against New England. But either way, to lose to New England and to not have any productivity was gross. And I guess for honorable mention, the Pittsburgh Steelers being 3-0 is a little bit of a surprise. I know it's not the hardest schedule so far for them, but
sure,
they've been efficient as well. I think that's going to be, kind of a glimpse, and then it'll start to fall back to reality.
Yeah, to kind of go back to the Cincinnati deal, you got to figure, Burrows in that first game had to shake off rust, and in the modern day NFL, they only have three preseason games, and generally they sit the starters at least the last preseason game, if not the second one. So that's why it seems like the defenses always have an edge over the offense at the beginning of the season. And I think that's the whole reason why they lost on that first game.
A lot of teams have had rust in that first week and even into week 2. And I think it's part of it is because they're not playing in preseason. I wonder if that, I know it's tryouts and, people are auditioning for jobs and such, but they got to be more ready,
Yeah,
Imagine if
I
they
would
didn't
agree.
have preseason games. You know,
Oh, yeah,
it would really be interesting to see who's ready and who's not. And I think that might be a fun way to go too.
it would be some putrid football. I think. I really do. I don't think it'd be good.
I mean, high
But
school football, and you don't play preseason games. I don't even think they do in college play preseason games. Maybe in college basketball, but I don't think they do in football.
right.
So, yeah, why are we doing
Yeah, they
preseason
usually
games
start off with
anyway?
cushy games though.
Yeah,
Except for the Gophers this year. They're deciding.
the Gophers are the cushy team.
Yeah, I wouldn't go that far, um, but going back to your Pittsburgh comment, uh, I think as long as Fields keeps on winning, you think Russ gets back on the field?
No, no, and
Yeah, I don't think
there's a
so either.
weird reason that he didn't play week one,
It was
and now
I thought it was a hamstring or something like that.
he was, I think, week one. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought it was a healthy scratch, and then wasn't he was dressed and then wasn't even ready. Like the scratch
Oh,
means he wasn't even going to be active for the game. Like they can't activate him or something.
hmm,
And they've rode
yeah,
Fields the
it
whole
could be,
way.
but I'm pretty sure I thought he ended up getting an injury like right before the weekend. It was something like that Thursday or Friday. He kind of came up lame, is what I
Now,
thought, but I could be wrong.
yeah, I mean, and they're not paying Russ anything anyway, so it's not on them to really feel obligated to start him.
Yep,
This they got a good deal for Justin Fields. He's been adequate for him. I think you just got to ride that out for a while now, unless something
true.
big happens.
Yeah, I would agree.
Um, but guys, we're gonna do stardom situms, and a lot of people always look for some sort of fantasy take, whether you like it or not, believe in it or not. Use the information to your liking. Maybe you agree with it. Maybe you get a different perspective to help you out. And we're gonna go two starters and two situms at each position,
Yep,
not including special teams, defense, or kicker.
correct.
Fun fact: um, there have been nine. Well, gosh, what was it now? Justin Tucker's the only one that missed field goals past 50 yards right now. Put it that way. Out of all the teams that have made field goals, so
That's not
it's
true.
it's.
McPherson missed one last night.
Oh yeah, that was probably a Sunday stat.
Right, right. Yep. But
So
yeah. Tucker's struggling. He's
it
definitely struggling.
is right. Yeah, I wonder if his journey over as the best kicker in the NFL now. What do you got for QB starters this week? And guys are also not trying to give you the obvious, to start the top three QBs. That's
Well, I'm
we're
trying not
kind
to,
of
but when you got a solid play, you got to make sure that people know that even if you have a decent backup who might be hot, you can't sit this guy over him, so to speak.
yeah,
Right?
sure.
So, all right. So here's who I got. I got Geno Smith versus the Lions. Lock it in.
Lock it in, he says.
Yes. Geno's gonna have a big game against the Lions. Lions secondary's beat up. They do have a good defense, but they've had 3 key injuries in the last week. I think Geno's he's gonna ball out. I think.
Yeah, that's a good pick. I like it.
So should I keep going?
Yeah, go with your number 2.
Number 2, he's gonna have a bounce back game after his dud of last week. C.J. Stroud versus the Jaguars. He's going to get back on the right path. I don't know if you knew this, but C.J. Stroud, up until playing the Vikings, had the longest streak of attempts without an interception in the league. And then we caused him to throw 2 interceptions
Right away, too. I think it was
Just
the
saying.
announcer
Oh yeah,
curse.
it was instantly, yes. So that's who I got for my other stardom.
Okay. I am going to go opposite Geno Smith, and I am going to take Jared Goff. Now, this is a little questionable, but in the last 3 matchups, they have been tremendously high-scoring games. And now Seattle does have the sixth best defenses on opposing quarterbacks, but that they also played Miami last week, and that was like a freebie to them. So I don't feel that they have a top passing defense, and Detroit really needs to get on track. They need to get Laporte involved. They need to get Amon-Ra involved. Jameson Williams had it through a dud. So I expect this to be very high scoring, and a lot of players in this game could be on this list as well. So I would Jared Goff's on my list to start here, and you might even pick him up in free agency. I think he's only owned in like 50% of leagues right now. I've seen him dropped all around. So
yeah, well, he has not really had the greatest of seasons. I don't know. I know that Laporta went out of the game on a cart, bad ankle, so I don't know if he's going to be playing, but that could mean more reps for the rest, right?
Yeah.
They do have a lot of weapons, so
yep.
Yeah, I can buy it a little bit. I got something for you a little bit later.
It's a little daring. But Goff's had some pretty good history with Seattle, so I'm rolling with that one. My second one is also a little daring, but coming off the highest passing yards so far this season, rookie Caleb Williams. Now he's playing the Rams, who are the 30th worst pass defense on opposing quarterbacks. So now things are clicking a little bit. They had a couple of tough games to start with some defenses. Now it's getting a little bit easier. Cole Kmet's coming around. We saw Roma Dunze have a game. Keenan Allen's still questionable. He might play. DJ Moore was getting more involved. This might be a huge passing attack. If not, he might take off and run for 50 yards, which you didn't really see yet, but I think he's got the escapability to throw up some numbers here. And this is a really good matchup where Kyler Murray took off. Brock Purdy had a good game. So this is something against the Rams that he needs to have a good game here.
Okay. You're probably not going to get me to really argue with that one. I could pick, but I'm just not. My biggest problem with the Chicago Bears is their coaching staff. I don't think that they're getting their team to where they need to be at game days. So
sure. Yep. Don't disagree there. Yep.
So
two stardom running backs.
Stardom running backs. All right. So, my lock 'em in player of the week for running back, Chuba Hubbard versus the Bengals.
Okay.
Mark it down.
Mark it down. Lock it in, he says.
Exactly. All right. The next is we're going back to our good old Seattle Lions game. And depending on whoever starts is going to be the guy who is going to be getting the yards and the rushing touchdowns, either Zach Charbonnet or Kenneth Walker. I think Kenneth Walker is going to be healthy enough to play, so he's probably going to be the guy that balls out. But if something happens in the week and that oblique happens to flare up, I think Zach Charbonnet is going to have a great day.
Sure. Yeah, I like it. I think that game is going to have some.
So we're kind of on the same page there. We're
Yeah.
thinking that there's going to be some scoring happening for sure.
So funny you're picking one side, and I'm going the other. Zach Moss at Carolina.
Okay.
So they have the 26th opposing defenses to running backs. But in the last two games, or in two of the three games, he's gotten double-digit fantasy points, and now he had a high of 17 touches where they thought it was going to be a little more split with Chase Brown. It's now teetering towards Zach Moss to be getting more carries and more carries. And we saw in Indianapolis last year, it was a little slow start and then started to progress into get comfortable. And if Cincinnati can get any type of a lead, they might be using a big running attack. So I can see Zach Moss getting another score, and I think he's got 2 on 3 weeks, so I can see him getting another one.
Right on.
Now, this one might be a little obvious, as we just talked about it. But J.K. Dobbins, I know he's third in rushing.
Yep.
and people are still using him in as a flex. But he's going against Kansas City, who is third against opposing running backs, which without, I don't know if Herbert's playing. I know he's really injured. And is he gonna get injured himself? I know you can't play that way, but I don't really trust their offense yet. And if your running back's third in yardage, I think you have to start him anyway, regardless who he's playing right now. Use him while you can, because you might fall out of that flex spot come later in the season.
Okay. That might be a little bit of a stretch for me to buy that one there, but it's all right.
It's all right. It's all right.
Yeah. So, okay. So let's move on to some wide receivers here. Okay. So this is probably my most obvious call of all my picks, but it's going to be essentially the same game that you were just talking about. So Jamar Chase versus the Panthers. It's, now, I was very pleased to see how well he played against Washington. I think he's finally starting to come around. I think it helped him immensely having Higgins on the field.
I think so too.
Because then they can't just focus on him. And I think the rookie is a Burton. I don't think he's necessarily ready to take a full workload, kind of like Higgins would do, or command serious attention. And then the receiver, Isovas, he's actually surprised me. I've been very fortunate in our guillotine league to pick him up 15 minutes before kickoff and start him, and got me 2 touchdowns a little over a week ago. So I was pretty pleased with that. So
that worked out great.
But just either any. I think Jamar's going to have a good day. I also think Bengals are just going to get off the schneid in that game.
I think they need to. If they go 0-4, man, it's over. You know.
Yeah. Well, then that prediction you had earlier in one of our previous podcasts about Higgins getting traded, that's very, very possible before the trade deadline.
He's got to be healthy, and I'm wondering how hurt he actually is. You know, sometimes it's the team makes it a little bit worse than justified not playing him because there's still some rift going on. So there could be some behind the scenes that, you know, maybe it's worse than it is. Maybe it's not at all, and they're using it to kind of shadow this whole thing. Mm-hmm. So we could see movement, especially if, you know, your guy picks it up quite a bit.
Yep. All right, so my next guy is a rookie who's been actually performing very well. Malik Neighbors. He's playing this Thursday, which I don't normally like. I don't like playing people on Thursday nights. Typically, if you look statistically, those games are always down. Mm-hmm. Generally, you don't get as much production.
Short rests and stuff like that.
Right, absolutely. And I think that Malik Neighbors he's going to go off. I think he's maybe not quite a generational talent, but he could be a generational talent for the Giants. They've never drafted a wide receiver this high before. Mm-hmm. He seems like he's the real deal so far.
And they have to use him if they want to win. And he's getting targets. He's getting touchdowns.
Tons of targets.
So he's almost.
I like what I see.
Unless you're absolutely stacked, I think this is a guy that you probably should want to play at least in a flex every week. You know, until you notice that they don't have a quarterback passing to him. So, yeah, I think you have to use him.
Yep.
Let's just stick with Carolina, Cincinnati.
Yeah, kind of had a feeling that might come up again.
Xavier Legette for Carolina. Now that Andy Dalton is taking the realm and showing people how to throw for 300 yards, this guy's been getting 6 targets now. Adam Thielen's on the IR with hamstring injury. So now he's moving up to the number 2 spot. And if Andy Dalton's slinging that rock, Xavier's going to be getting some some catches, some targets, some yardage, hopefully a couple of tutties. So I can see that happening, and especially when we saw Jaden Daniels carve him up.
Right.
So I can
Yeah.
see Carolina putting up some points here too.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's a really good call out. I would actually say for most of the fantasy football people, Legette's probably not even rostered in your league.
He's probably
So
not. I think,
if you need a flyer, if you need somebody to lock in, there's your guy.
and it's not a bad pickup, especially if Thielen's on the IR for a couple of weeks. Is that for a minimum? So
Right.
I think you should take a flyer. I'm sure there's somebody you can get rid of. Drop a second tight end or third kicker or something.
Yep.
My second guy, this may be a little questionable. We haven't seen a huge production yet, but I'm going Michael Wilson from Arizona. Now they're playing Washington, and they have the worst pass defense. So last week he had a career high 9 receptions. I think they're finally getting him involved. He had a slow start with two receptions the first week, but I think they're starting to get him more involved. And now if Marvin's going to be getting double covered, he's a surefire number 2 receiver. Kyler's starting to pick it up a little bit, so don't be surprised if this guy gets 80 yards and a score.
Yeah, and I wouldn't doubt it, especially considering, well, in that very first game, I think also, it's the same thing we talked about with most offenses. They just fell flat on their face, right? And so that's why even Marvin Harrison Jr. got nothing, got no action. Come out then the following week, Marvin Harrison blows up, Now defenses are focusing on Marvin Harrison Jr. So I mean, I think that's a pretty good call out. I think that could be very good for.
Again, a flex spot, or if you're in dire need of a pickup, he might be available. I kind of doubt it.
I'm right,
but we'll see how he's at here.
I got to do some waivers tonight, so
yeah,
there you go.
The tight end position, always my favorite.
Okay, well, you kind of alluded to the one guy earlier when you were talking about Caleb Williams. So I'm going to follow that lead. It's Cole Kmet versus the Rams. I think he's finally starting to get some looks. I'm surprised he hasn't been like the number one guy that Caleb Williams has been going to, considering, most rookie quarterbacks that they're going to go through a rough patch, and he started off with a rough patch.
Yeah.
And generally the tight ends, the relief valve, know?
Yep.
And so, but so I think Kmet's going to have a good day versus the Rams.
Okay.
Yeah. My next one is, people know him. He had a really big game last week, and I expect it to continue. And I think that's Dallas Goedert from Philly against the Buccaneers. I think the Buccaneers, I think teams have kind of figured out their weaknesses, and I think that Goddard's going to have a big game against them.
They came back down to reality. I know Tampa Bay's battling some injuries on defense, so this might be a good opportunity to, utilize some points. And if A.J. Brown's still injured, which I believe he is for another week or two, and maybe outside of their bye week, I know they have an early bye week. He could come back after that. So Goddard's going to get some targets for sure.
See, and so Devonta Smith, he's in the concussion protocol. A.J. Brown's got the hamstring issue. It sounds like if Devonta's out, they may try to bring AJ to play, right? But there's a high risk of re-injury with hamstrings.
Yeah. And
from what I've heard is that they want to wait since they have the week 5 bye, they want to wait till week 6. So that could just mean some serious action for Goddard.
And if you want to go back to wide receivers, Jahan Dotson might be a good play there too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We have the same for Cole Kmet, coming off the big game last week, 10 receptions for 97 yards. Like you said, they're starting to click with Caleb Williams. And I think it's a really good opportunity again with the Rams defense that we might see some more scoring. And he might be available. I know he's been available in a couple of leagues. So we'll see.
Yep,
Um,
absolutely.
and I don't know how this still happens, but I'm going back to the Cincinnati Carolina game and going Mike Gesicki.
Nice.
They have the 28th ranked defense against opposing tight ends. He's got 18 targets. He's going to be seeing more. He had a lot of targets this past week against Washington when they needed him. So if T. Higgins is still iffy, we could see more of Gesicki getting some more targets as well. And if this could be a high scoring game, well, it better be because I got a few
Yeah.
people in this start.
Right. Yeah, I hear you there.
I didn't really go back through and look to see how many I have in each game. I thought that the matchups work out well for each player. Obviously, we're not going to hit on all these guys, so I'm going with the majority rules on it.
Yeah, right on, right on. So now we're getting into the sit 'em part of the segment.
Sit 'em. Sit down.
Down in front. So, all right, you want me to kick it off, or do you want to kick it off this time?
Yeah, I'll go first, and we'll see if we have any overlapping here.
All right, sounds good.
Number 1, your old boy, Kirk O'Chains. Sit him down, boy. He's playing New Orleans. They have the third best ranked defense against the pass. Kirk's only averaging 11 fantasy points per game right now. He kind of looks dreadful. He's not moving around. Yes. He's not finding a rhythm. I thought Pitts was going to have a better start. Drake London's, he's looked okay, but they should be firing on more cylinders than what they are. So if you have a better option, which I'm sure you do, don't bother.
Right.
And this one may be surprise, maybe not. I would say hold off on starting Justin Fields this week as well. Indianapolis has done okay against quarterbacks thus far. Pittsburgh's offense still looks atrocious. They've only scored, I think, 2 or 3 offensive touchdowns in 3 weeks. I don't expect him to pass for 300 or to throw 3 tutties. He might get a couple of rushing yards, but he's only averaging 13 fantasy points right now. So I would just hold off. Let it come back down to reality. Don't hit the panic button and say, they're 3-0. I got to start this guy.
Right on. All right. So, my sit-em. Now, this one probably not one going out too much of a limb. A lot of people, I think, are starting to doubt him, even though he's a fantastic athlete at the QB position. And that's Anthony Richardson versus Pittsburgh this week.
Mm-hmm.
So even though he's performed all right, but for fantasy, he hasn't been very good, especially last week. He was not very good. And Pittsburgh's defense is just so dominant. I just don't see him being.
We don't know what the status is on Pittman. Anthony Richardson had a solid week 1 with like 25 or 26 points, but then the last 2 weeks, I think he's averaged like 5.5. So it's been not good. If you're looking for a replacement, I agree with you. This is a good week to toss someone else in and let him get his, footing back together.
Agreed. All right, next one I have is Baker Mayfield versus the Eagles. I think the Eagles defense has been playing pretty well against the pass. And like I said, I think defenses might have exposed their offensive play calls a little bit. So unless they come up with a little bit of a modification on their scheme, I think Philly might dominate them this upcoming weekend.
So Philly held New Orleans offense to a pretty mediocre day. Right. And if Philly's offense is on a short leash, then their defense really needs to step up. And, that could be a game where their defense steps up and clamps down.
Right.
And wins it for them. Sit-ems. This is where in the running back position, I start to go a little off the chain here. And I'm talking the Kirko chain. I'm talking, you'll see. First one, not too obvious. I would say sit Jerome Ford. His best game so far is 64 yards. He only had 10 carries against the Giants, which should have been a lot more. I know their defense is only like in the middle tier, but Dante Foreman's still there, maybe picking up some carries and touches away from Jerome Ford. He just doesn't seem like he's getting a lot of yards after contact. You need to see a bust-out game to see before you can start Jerome Ford, and I don't think this is going to be it.
Yeah, and I would give you that all day long. Yep, I agree.
And then now the controversy begins probably till the end.
Uh-oh.
Sit David Montgomery. I know. He's probably your starting 2 running backs, but he's going to be splitting time with Gibbs. This is going to be a passing attack. Seattle has the 8th best defense against the run. If Detroit wants to stay in this game at all, Goff's going to pass for 350, which is why he's on the stardom list. So I don't know if Montgomery's the best back they have for pass catching, and it's probably going to be on Gibbs. So
sure,
I think this is Gibbs' time to shine.
By far more dynamic as well. I mean, just overall.
I mean, he might get some scores on the goal line, but I just don't see a big game coming from Montgomery.
And that's just it. I agree with you. That's kind of Montgomery's game now, right? It's
and I think he only had 35 yards against Tampa Bay. So I just don't see it.
Yep. Yeah, you're not going to get me to argue on that one. Okay, now here's where the controversy really begins.
One-upper.
Yeah, exactly. So James Cook. Sit him. Going against the Ravens. He really has not been, if you look at his statistics, he had the 1 3-touchdown game. Other than that, he's been very kind of hit or miss. Granted, we're only 3 games into the season, but I think the Ravens are looking to shut him down. And I'm going to call it right now. They're going to also pull out a win against Buffalo.
Okay. This is becoming a battle. Now I have to start James Cook, so take that.
All right, so my next one is Josh Jacobs for the Green Bay Packers. Sit him. Vikings defense has been looking pretty good.
Yeah.
And Josh Jacobs really hasn't been looking all that great. Emmanuel Wilson essentially got some garbage time, but he looked better than Jacobs did all game last week. So I think he's a high risk play. I would sit Josh Jacobs.
I don't oppose that one. Now, if you need a starter, I would say you're sure you can put him in, but if you have options, use your other options.
Yep. Sometimes it's about playing the matchups. I mean, obviously, when you got a guy like Josh Allen, even though I might have called him a bust in a previous podcast, and so far I'm probably eating those words. Exactly. Wouldn't be the first time I heard that. But he's always going to be the starter. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to running backs, I think running backs, there's very few that are a must start every week.
Yeah.
A McCaffrey, right? McCaffrey's a must start when healthy.
Right. Derrick Henry.
Sure. Exactly.
Yep. Okay. You did too, right?
Yep.
Okay, let's move on to wide receivers, and this is where the tomatoes start flying in.
Uh-oh.
Okay. I'm going to start with I'm going to lay it down easy, give you a freebie here, and say sit Jalen Waddle.
Okay.
Tennessee has the 3rd best defense to opposing wide receivers. We have no idea who Miami's quarterback is going to be. It could be Tyler Huntley. It could be Tim Boyle. Sounds like the Dolphins' offense is going to be boiling up, and it's just going to be pretty bad. So I don't see much happening there. it's going to take a little time for some rapport to happen. I don't see
Yeah.
much out of Waddle, especially if you're going to go to Tyreek Hill first, and I would too. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't take the risk. And again, these are if you can afford to play someone else, do it. And the
Right.
second one, this is probably the worst call of the day. Sit Chris Godwin against Philadelphia.
Hmm. Yeah.
It makes zero sense because Philadelphia has the 31st worst pass defense against wide receivers. Chris Godwin has scored in every game this year, but it is Mike Evans' turn to have a big week. It's like they always split off. I'll go two, you go two. I'll go one, you go one. They never break it out together. So now they're going to overload one. Mike Evans is going to get a couple scores in the back of the end zone. Godwin, 3 catches, 27 yards.
Okay. I'll go with it. Somehow I think your numbers might be skewed. You're
64% of stats are made up on the spot.
yeah. 60% of the time, it works every time. Alrighty. So now here's where we're gonna get into a little bit of a. You're gonna probably have a bone to pick with me on this one. So, my wide receiver that you should sit this week, Amon-Ra St. Brown, against the Seahawks defense.
What the hell?
Yeah. Yeah. And the reason why I say that is just I personally think that Seattle's defense, they have a defensive minded coach, and their defense is playing at a very high level. I think that Seattle will be able to keep the ball on the ground with either one or both of their running backs. It's going to limit the number of plays, and Goff just hasn't been playing that great. And that's why I say sit Amon-Ra St. Brown.
It's a bold take.
It is. All right, my next one is actually another top wide receiver. Garrett Wilson. Sit him.
Oh.
Yep. Lazard's probably going to get all the action. Broncos are going to put their best guy on Garrett Wilson, and I don't think Garrett Wilson's going to be able to be as productive as people would like. Obviously, he's going to get a little bit of production, but I don't think it's going to be anything to write home about.
Patrick Surtain the second.
Yep, exactly.
Okay. I can buy into that one a little bit more. I guess we'll see on the Amon-Ra pick.
Yeah, we will.
We will see here. Okay, tight ends. It kind of calms the waters down a little bit. I would say sit Colby Parkinson at Chicago. Rams offense just looks atrocious. He's only averaging 5 fantasy points. His best game so far this season is 5 targets. We thought we would see more with Kupp and Puka out. We didn't. I don't know. It just doesn't look good for him. So, and funny that you said Garrett Wilson because I say sit Tyler Conklin versus Denver. He's only had 10 total targets all season long, and Denver has only 5 teams have allowed less points than Denver, so they are having a low scoring games. So I don't see many touchdowns happening this game, and Conklin is not going to be in their first few options. He might be their 5th option. So It would very much surprise me if he got in the end zone at all.
Yeah, and he's just not. Yeah, he had a really nice game the previous game, but the previous 2 before that he was virtually non-existent.
Yeah, last game that might have been his ceiling. So I would get overly excited on that. Yeah,
I would agree with you. Yep. Yeah. basically you could see like Rogers would look through his progressions, and he's like the fifth progression on virtually every route.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think it would just happen to be circumstances of um, the way that the defense was covering that left Conklin open to get all those receptions the other game. So
Yeah. Yeah.
okay, now that was your two, right?
2 for you now. Yep.
Okay. Uh, so this is tying in with your uh, Kirk Cousins take. Sit Pitts versus the Saints. Mark it down. Just kidding. But no,
Lock it in.
Pitts has not been. He never really has lived up to his hype.
No.
He'll have a flash game here, and then he'll go 4 more games, and of almost non-existence. I think it's just one of those massively overrated players that came in the league and just never was really to be able to adapt.
We haven't seen Kirk Cousins utilize Pitts as he liked using like a TJ Hawkinson, and who was the tight end before that. But they just haven't. We haven't seen that tight end connection from Kirk yet. So
I would agree. Yep. All right, next one is the rookie Bowers from the Raiders. Sit him playing against the Browns. The Raiders, I think they kind of showed who they are last week, that they're not one of the better teams in the league with Gardner Minshew. So, yeah, I think the Browns are going to get off the schneid and kind of spank some Raider butt.
Sure.
So
I like it. That makes a little bit of sense. More than you normally have.
yeah, I was just gonna say just a little bit.
Cool. Well, hopefully this information helps you, helps me, helps everyone else except Gully. We need him to be out of the Guillotine League. We both had a couple of scares, although mine was because I didn't have to play a guy, so I chose not to. But yeah, it's not fun when you have all your guys on Sunday night and Monday night, and you need, you still need points. I'd rather just get it out of the way early and try to hit that higher mark. But
last night was brutal. I was just like, come on.
Whoever was the bottom team barely escaped, and it was. And the previous week was absolutely immaculate. Oh my gosh, dude!
No kidding. I mean, in that league, the Bears, they should have been out. They were out by like a point, and then all of a sudden,
they got enough time for Jalen Hurts to go back on the field, score enough points to take the lead, and loses it on the last interception of the game and goes back into last place. Oh, wow. It's just incredible. Anyway, for our third segment of the day, I wanted to give Gully here a chance to redeem his stardom situm picks, because they will be atrocious.
Wow.
And these guys are people that could be on the waiver wire. They could be sitting on your bench and you're wondering what to do with them. Do they deserve a second or third chance, or do you cut them? Do you want to ride with them? What do you want to do? Rattle them off. Let's go. Christian Kirk.
Let him go.
Caleb Williams.
Obviously depends on how deep of a league you have. I think later in the season he's going to be worth a lot more. I think he's going to start using his legs a little bit more. I think he's going to have a higher ceiling than what he has now. So that one I'm going to kind of hold.
Okay. Kirko Chains, Mr. Cousins.
That's a tough one. He's got a lot of weapons, I mean, he's got a nice running back core. He's got a really nice receiving core. I mean, I got to say, I like Daryl Mooney a lot this week.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think he's a hold. I think you got to hold him.
Hold on to him. Okay.
Sure.
Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah. Fortunately, that kind of goes with the Christian Kirk. Yeah. Let him go.
Funny how just a year or two ago, Trevor Lawrence was like the third or fourth ranked QB. Now he got a huge contract, and they
Hmm.
just look absolutely pathetic.
I
Uh,
personally,
it's just
I don't necessarily know that it's all Trevor Lawrence's fault as much as it is the coaching. I just don't think that Doug
yeah,
Peterson is all that he was supposed to be after he got that Super Bowl win with Philly.
he's not
Right? There's
who
a
we thought
reason
they
why he's
were.
still not in Philly,
Yeah,
right?
yep,
I mean, it didn't take very long before he was out.
yeah.
So,
And well, he did start resurrecting the Jaguars, and it's like I don't
mhm,
know if they capped too early or not, but
yeah,
um, anyway, we have Zamir White.
yeah, sell. He's just not getting the carries. I think Madison's proven his value. Yeah, I really thought that he had a pretty good size upside to him,
Yep.
but yeah, so far it doesn't look like coaching staff believes him. So
Gus Edwards.
I like Gus. I've always been a fan of Gus. Um, I think you can. I think if you got a roster spot that you can stash them, I think that's probably a pretty good play based off of your analysis with the J.K. Dobbins, right? So J.K. is a good running back, but he's a little fragile.
Mm-hmm.
So if you got room to stash him, I'd stash him.
Keon Coleman for Buffalo.
He actually had a nice touchdown yesterday. I like him. The problem is I think that there's a lot of really good wide receivers out there. So I think as the year goes by, he's going to get a little bit better. I would say I think he's a hold'em, depending on your situation at wide receiver, right? It's all based upon
Yeah.
scenarios, but
Yep.
I think
I
you
like
hold
to
him.
hold him for now.
Yeah.
Trey McBride.
Okay, so this was one of my guys that I really didn't think was going to be. I thought he was going to be a bust compared to what all the other analysts out there say about um, about how well he was going to do on the season. I think I might be starting to prove myself right. He seemed to really start off hot, and now he's kind of waning off. And I think part of that could be the emergence of Marvin Harrison Jr.,
Mm-hmm.
let alone with Wilson. Yeah, you got to hold him. You got to hold him just because tight ends this year is just they are so down in production numbers. So
Yeah.
I think you hold him, but I don't think you expect a whole lot. I guess that's what I'm
Okay.
going to go with.
Yeah. Yep. Sure. Justin Herbert.
Boy, if you're in a super flex league where you start two quarterbacks, yeah, you got to have them probably at least on your bench. I don't think at this point, and I think mainly that is just because the high level of quarterback play that there is in the NFL these days. That even if you decided to stream quarterbacks, you might be able to find, a better one that given week. And I think part of that is due to the Chargers not being able to pay Mike Williams or Keenan Allen.
Now Quentin
And so,
Johnston hasn't looked too bad so far to start the
right,
season, but Herbert
agreed.
hasn't even touched 200 yards.
Right, right.
So
Yeah.
that's So
and you
strange.
but you also got a new head coach, a new offensive scheme that comes in.
Hmm.
It looks like Harbaugh's trying to stick with the run a little bit more, a little more ball control. Let their and they do have a pretty decent defense. So, I think I would say he's borderline hold, depending on your scenario. And I personally, if you let him go, I actually wouldn't. I wouldn't.
Target him.
Yeah, I wouldn't. Yeah, it would not. I would not tell you you're wrong or right. I just,
Sure.
um, yeah.
My sleeper of the year so far is not paid off. What do you do with Greg Dulcich?
Um, you never bring up his name again. uh, yeah, I don't. No, don't get me wrong. I think he could be a pretty good play. Um,
I think you got to wait
Obviously,
till he produces and get him on the waiver wire. I don't think you want to
true.
roster him unless you have
Agreed.
to.
Yep. And I like I said, it kind of comes with the territory. Sometimes with a young QB, right? Bo Nix.
Mhm.
So I mean, one of the problems when you got a quarterback that can run, right? If he's getting happy feet, he ends up chooses to run versus maybe say look for that relief valve, right, and throw the
Yeah.
ball off. So, and that could be what the scenario is there.
And what most people want to know, do you drop Christian McCaffrey?
Uh, well, I'd say hell to the no on that, but it isn't looking good. I know he's in Germany right now, getting his Achilles looked at. So they're probably doing some of that like stem cell blood enriching stuff for his Achilles to try to get it to heal.
Yeah.
So it's really not boding well. I mean, unless you don't have an IR spot and you're 0-3, I wouldn't cut him. I would trade him. Right? You got to try to get something for him because he was probably the number one pick, or like the one guy in my league. He was just like, I can't take him because I always get screwed at the number one pick. He actually picked Bryce Hall over
I
McCaffrey.
I ended up picking McCaffrey in our guillotine. It was only because I have Brees Hall and so many other leagues that I just wanted to change. And
Yeah.
anyone else up at one just didn't feel right at the time. So I took the risk. And luckily, I have Jordan Mason to back me up, man.
You picked him the same round that I was targeting him. I mean, I drafted so bad in that league. If it wasn't for Justin Jefferson and Nico Collins, I would be out already. Those two have basically saved me.
I overspent on Jamar Chase, 700 of our 1,000. But when you look at the market, and Rashee Rice went for 380 week one, and Jamar Chase is available, I think you have to pounce on an everyday player. So
Yeah, I
I
mean,
must needed when you have 18 teams.
agreed. I agreed. I still think it was a little bit much, but hey, it's better than being out.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yep. Right.
Uh,
Well, that was the other thing is like for people that haven't done guillotine leagues, in short reference, you start with the amount of players is how many weeks there are. So if you start a full season, you have 18 teams. You don't play head to head, so whoever scores the most or the least amount of points in the week that gets eliminated. Their players go into the free agent pot. You bid on them, and you only have $1,000 to start with. So my biggest thought was, well, if I don't get Jamar Chase and I'm out, I'm going to really regret not even attempting or trying to get one of the top players that's in the
right.
league. Now, I did handcuff myself that I only have $300 left, but
Sure.
again, we're still alive. So
Yeah. Yeah.
who knows? I'd
And
rather
if you
spend it
can,
all and then lose.
and that's that's part of the game, right? It's knowing when to spend and when to hold.
Yeah.
So, for instance, the other guy, the Raptors, in that league, he spent over, I want to say, because he got Rashee Rice and he got somebody else. and he spent, I want to say, like $600 of his fab budget. But he, like you two guys, you guys have been doing all right. So ever since then, now if you can just hold off until the rest of the league starts to catch up with you in spending,
Yeah.
then you're, then you should be fine. Or you gotta be uh kind of targeted, right? So
Right.
you, like, if you look at matchups for not this week, but look at the
Bye
previous
weeks.
or the next week, right? So then
Yep.
you can make your plays and maybe pick up a guy for $1 or pick up a guy for nothing, once it gets to free agency picking. So
Well,
but yeah,
we're at 3 weeks in. Gully and the Bully are still alive. I think
I'm
I
right.
think the fans, once we kind of gave them a quick little glimpse here, players at work or people at work are very interested. For those listening, Kelly and Logan wanted a little shout out, but if they
Right.
they want to keep up to date with how we're doing, and I always get questions like, "Are you surviving?" I'm like, "I don't know yet." So,
Right.
we'll,
Last night I was sweating. That's for sure.
we'll try to keep them updated. We'll try to keep you updated on a weekly basis to see if we can continue more Stardom Situm picks for you.
Absolutely.
Life happens, so forgive us if we're back here by week 7, but we'll do our best to stay on top of things.
Yep. We apologize. It's like you said, life happens, and hopefully we can continue getting things out on a regular basis here.
That's right. So thanks for tuning in, guys. Be sure to like, follow, subscribe, all the fun things, and share.
Yep.
And tune in. We'll see you next week.
Yep. And then make sure you lock in all my picks.
Lock them in.